So for this second debate, I'm going to jump into it immediately because we don't have so much time. So we're very glad to have Guillaume Gosse with us. Does he hear me already or not yet? No, he's not. Okay. Guillaume, we thank Guillaume to have accepted our invitation on this very tough subject. Guillaume is a real estate developer and expert at Immobel. He's going to hopefully give us more insight on what's going on inside this enormous business. Then we have Amine Belemlih. Amine is a professor and a systemic expert from Casablanca, just finishing a PhD at Paris Dauphine. And I heard Amine, out there he is, has a lot of experience in urban development and collective intelligence of village and city development. Hi, welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, hello.
Yes, great. Hello, nice to meet you. So we're still waiting for Guillaume.
Guillaume is online, Amine is not there yet.
Hi, Guillaume, sorry.
Yeah. Hi, Guillaume.
Hello, nice to meet you all.
Thank you, because Guillaume was a last minute keynote. It was tough to find somebody who would address that question. And I think Amine is on the way. From faraway Casablanca, sunny, he must be very hot, maybe that's why.
Yeah. Oh, hello, we have our last.
Oh.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, perfectly fine.
Great. Thank you for being with us. So I have introduced you very shortly both, but we're going to jump into the debate already because we don't have that much time. So we remembered our policymakers have been setting goals for 2030, and the major one was to reduce CO2 emissions by 55%, if I'm not mistaken, by 2030. Now, if that's going to happen, well, if it were to happen, we would need to renovate 95% of real estate and infrastructure. Since the climate marches, we've been renovating at a rate of around 1% a year in Belgium. But if we want to be compliant to the goals, we would have to renovate at a rate of 12% a year. Now, when we know that renovating 1 square meter costs around 1,500 euros, a quick calculation would be that it would cost almost 2,000 billion euros for a country like Belgium, which is, as of my knowledge, not money we have. And it would also take a lot of time, which is also something we don't have that much. So the question is actually the decision makers have taken these policies, or they can probably not calculate, or they are probably incompetent, or they are just lying. I mean, it's not going to happen, this 95% of a renovation. So how and with whom? Because we know that there is a lack of 400,000 people in the sector regarding the workforce. So how and with whom, and how long will it take to get to the renovations we need to do by 2030? I don't know who wants to jump in first.
Guillaume would like to give a first.
Okay, with pleasure. My first answer will be that we are doing quite very good thing in durability, in renovation, and more in the new building. The new construction is very efficient, and we have in Belgium a strong regulation for the new building. And we've seen that since the crisis of the COVID-19, the expectation of the market from a tenant and investor point of view is now even more. They have more expectation than the regulation, because they really want a carbon neutral building, which is for the new building aspect. I think a very important element. But as we all know, the new buildings represent only a small part of the real estate market, and the huge concentration and the huge amount of money which has to be invested in that area is the main problem and the main goal. Just to bring a small, it's not a correction, but it's my personal meaning. 1,500 euro is the price of a new construction in Belgium. So that price is very, very, very high, and I think we can already do huge improvement with very smaller budgets, with like 200, 300 euro per square meter, which can help us to isolate the building, and also, for instance, to remove the fossil energy use by adding solar cells at pump, and by monitoring the consumption of electricity, water, and so on.
Okay, so you feel that there is a real how do you say that? They really want from the sector. They really want to get to a more efficient building and renovations, but it's still, you said, a very small part of the infrastructure and real estate. So are there things that are put in place to broaden that part of the real estate that is getting into renovation?
Yes, I think it's now 10 or 15 years ago, the Belgian government obliged to give energetical performance certificate for all transactions, for all real estate assets in Belgium. At the beginning, it was a pure assessment, but with the time, our authorities are just collecting a lot of information and are really building a cadastre of the situation in Belgium. And from that perspective, they will, I think, begin to act. There will be many leverage possible. It can be taxes, it can be tax cutting, it can be a mix between them. So there are a lot of possibilities, but the timing of 2030 is quite not long for real estate renovation and for such a huge objective. So that's not that easy.
Okay. Do you have some views on the same question?
I think maybe we can just I think the complexity of this huge task, which, as it seems, hasn't succeeded, taken from a technicist standpoint. A lot of money, a lot of incentives programs driven by different bodies of the states or the EU haven't been able so far. To get the right traction and a significant impact. So I think this invites us to change our mental model or software in the way we approach urban renovation. We need to change the paradigm, okay. And I think this is the whole point of this summit. So there are some let's say some paths that we can take, or experimentations that we can get inspired with. I think what we're missing in these type of projects, renovation projects, is the intellectual horsepower part, the design part, the diagnostic part. There needs it's a portion of the projects that usually get skimmed or restricted to the minimum, while there is a tremendous value to get out of proper diagnosis, like climate profiling of the buildings or the urban area we are looking into, building orientation, zooming in the worst offenders from a thermodynamic standpoint. Where are the leaking points? Landscape analysis, trying to see with the biosphere surrounding the buildings what can be done. And obviously, we need to be surgical. It's laser focused. And taken from a thermodynamic standpoint, with the proper level of analysis, we could, like the acupuncture, we could do some urban acupuncture and zooming in or focusing on some very fragile points that could change the thermic profile of the building. There is also this whole still emerging sustainable by design engineering, meaning that we reposition the buildings or the building within its larger ecosystem and biosphere surroundings and roads and so on. This means that we could, do some change the the thermic print just by using the positioning of trees or alleys of trees, etc. That gives a tremendous impact on the overall thermic profile. Another perspective, this comes down also to material, using local material as much as possible. There is a whole, as part of the diagnosis and analysis part, there is also the urban sociology part, meaning that we need to understand the behaviors. What are the patterns of behaviors that generate this carbon imprint or impact on the environment, and this couldn't be done outside a significant involvement of the stakeholders, of the citizens, of the civil society itself. They need to take full ownership of these projects. If we try to impose from a top-down perspective, major renovation projects, we might. This comes with a lot of constraints, with irritants for the daily life of the citizens. So they need to understand the why, the purpose, and if they're involved, they might come up. They're the best placed to know how they're living, what are their needs, and what kind of smart, frugal ideas that could be performed.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I think it's a very interesting point, and it's a question that I ask myself a lot as well, is do you think the citizens themselves lack of interest and lack of probably knowing the importance of their input, or is it the other way around, that probably maybe the governments don't really take it seriously? Kind of. I'm going to give a concrete example. I have followed the new metro line that is being put in Brussels, and there is a lot of people, a lot of citizens actually don't want this metro line to be put between Gare du Midi and another place that goes just under Stalingrad, because it's right now completely stopping the retail at the moment. So they're really against it, but still it's still going on. And I have other examples about this. So do you think it's a lack of political engagement from the citizens, or the other way around? Because what I'm seeing now is that the citizens are quite engaged, but they're just not listened to.
That's a fair point. I think it's really, we're missing the link between both worlds. I think that there are two worlds, institutional or political world and the citizen world. And the intermediary institutions are really not doing their work properly. I think there is a tremendous issue of translation of the different logics of interest, of the different logics of actors and stakeholders. Mm-hmm. Let me give you the example. You took the example of metro. Let me shift to another continent, to Medellin in South America. Mm-hmm. And they worked on transportation. There was a major issue that divided the city in two. The rich city and the poor city, the rich side and the poor side. Mm-hmm. And they really get close to sorry to say, gangs,
Mm-hmm.
to local associations and NGOs, to groups of citizens, and sitting with them and trying to understand how they live the thing exactly. And what is it that they're missing? What is it that the public policies are missing? And sometimes it just needs, to rebuild trust. Sometimes there is mistrust between the different, parties, and mobilizing a hybrid set or plural set of stakeholders coming from the top or the bottom on an experimental project. Maybe it could be a leverage point to reignite the confidence. Mm-hmm. If I can add another perspective from all what has been mentioned, is the business model. I think it's really important. And I think we could gain a lot from the ESCO model, the energy service company model. It's still emerging, but there is maybe a whole business to be thought of to provide, let's say, to have new breed of ESCOs that include, energy saving projects, retrofitting, energy infrastructure outsourcing, etc., with mechanisms that maybe include a whole range of applicable equipments configured, in a way to reduce the energy cost of a building. And I think they will be best placed. I mean, let's take an example. A building costs like 5K euros of energy per month. After like 3 or 4 months of proper analysis, and there are the tools for that, they could come up with a reduction to 1K euros, but they'll be paid 5K for like 5 years. Let me just give simply an example. And after like 5 years or X years, the payback will be performed with a significant margin. And then the inhabitants or the state that owns the building or private company, whatever, gets back a building that costs only 1K. You see what I mean? So I think we could be innovative, combining things in a symbiotic way, like biosphere stuff, technosphere stuff, and social sphere stuff, meaning that it's not. We should be innovative in the way we combine, integrate from a systemic, holistic way these different components, including an economic part. If we miss it, I mean, it's not going to be sustainable.
Thank you very much. I have another question. So I have several questions for you, Guillaume. So that's one question from the internet. Someone asked, how do you renovate the building, yes, for 200 euros per square meter? So that's one first question. And then I have another one, because we were talking about private real estate, but what about the public real estate? Because in the private real estate, I think everyone knows the budget is there, like we could have what's needed, but when it regards the public buildings, who will do it, and at what cost? Who is going to pay for that?
Okay, for the first question, maybe I gave a wrong explanation. I was just saying that 1,500 is a big amount, and that's the building that you need to build a new house. 200 is, of course, almost nothing, but I was just saying that with a budget of 200 euro per square meter, for a house of 200 square meter, it's 40,000 euro. With that amount, you can already start a good renovation for a house. Because one of the main points is the financing for a family, for a citizen. Everyone is very aware of the carbon impact that we need to bring, and we need to improve in our society. But on our scale, what can we do, and with which amount? Because in a sense, you can be aware, and you know that we have to change our way of living and we have to reduce our carbon emission. But on the day-to-day basis, it's a big amount of money, 40,000 euro for a family. And I think the housing market for the existing apartment and house is the main target for such a renovation and carbon reduction. For the public building and the public policy, that's a difficult problematic. This has to be handled by the politics with a long-term strategy. I will give a very good example because my office is located on the Place Poulart in Brussels, and I'm just next to the Palais de Justice of Brussels. The Palais de Justice is under renovation for I think 40 years now. I never saw it without before the renovation, and it's very, very big enough for all the justice department of the federal administration and also the regional one. But because they don't have enough budget to renovate the building, they are renting just on the Poulart Square. They're renting for 20, and they paid I think per year 20 million euro in location, and just in the other side of the square, they have enough surfaces, and it's just they don't have the amount to renovate the building to avoid to pay that loan. So I don't know the answer now, but the financing on the long term is really the key aspect, and which is difficult to understand. We can maybe the private sector is always ready to assist and make with the administration, for instance, sales and leaseback contract. But on the other way, it's quite not bad that the authority and the Belgian government can stay owner of this building. But that's pure strategy question for me.
And what about in English it must be the same, PPPs, private, public, and
partnerships.
Partnerships.
EPSCOs are examples of PPPs. The energy saving companies, that's absolutely.
The ESCOs.
EPSCOs, yeah.
Okay.
So maybe Amine, if you want to answer that question.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I don't have a lot of experiences with the PPP. I know that it's quite. We use them a lot in Belgium, in Europe, for some years. But there are advantages and disadvantages. The risk in the long term is that the private sector get more money than the public sector in that kind of partner. And in a sense, it can really help the public sector to realize his ambition and his development. But For instance, I am one example. I think is in France, the renovation of the high-speed train line between Paris and Bordeaux. It's a partnership between private and public companies, if I'm not wrong. And the negotiation of the contract was very, very difficult because on the long term, in a sense, at the beginning of the project, to make the project, they need money, and the government doesn't always have that money to realize that project. But on the long term, the contract, we see that the private part is taking a lot of money from the contract. So at the end, I'm not fully convinced about the PPP. That's where I want to conclude. Sometimes it can be okay. Sometimes it's not very, very effective and very good. But maybe you have much better experiences than I have with PPP.
There are some countries that are more advanced than others. For example, coming back to PPPs in urban regeneration and urban transformation, using PPPs, I think there are a lot of interesting experiments in Italy to look after. But when we sorry to come back to this ESCO thing, energy saving companies use mostly for lighting, for example, but it could go beyond. In this case, ownership of the building remains the same, is intact, and it's cost neutral for the owning entity, whether a state agency or whatever. and they continue to pay the same amount for a certain duration, and then the whole investment has, once it's been paid back by the cost differentiation, they get back with they come out with a significant drop in the costs. So I think it's really worth investigating or exploring potential innovative ways to leverage this ESCO model or as a vehicle for urban regeneration and transformation. I think it's just a way to explore.
Mm-hmm. So I would just like to bounce back on something you said about the trust we have in the government. Someone asked, do you think this collapse of trust is not a temporary issue, but a systemic civilization human thinking collapse?
That's a wonderful question. I think it goes beyond hard to answer though. I think it goes well beyond this COVID outbreak, right? It's I think it's a structural trend, and I think representative democracy is in crisis in its in its current form. So it's a bit of a challenge. However, you know, when you come back to this smart city buzz or trend, let's say, there is the, let's say, I'm gonna really be a bit of a caricatural commentator. The American way is a bit solution driven. It's a solutionist way of promoting smart cities, meaning I have a solution, who's got the right problem for it, which is, I mean, it should be the other way around.
Yeah.
While there is an emerging, and I think it's going to be thriving in the next decade, an emerging school of thought, more European, that is socially smart cities. Once again, it comes down to the fact that our buildings or our city areas, they're not administrative things, objects. They are common good, and they come down to the communities that live within it. So they might not be experts, but they're experts in the living, right?
Exactly.
And I think one of the great challenges is to instill this notion within the minds of the public authorities or public policymakers that they need to listen to what comes from the ground, not think instead of them. I mean, people.
So
you're saying dialogues.
You're saying we have to rebuild the city for the citizens and not for, I guess for capital attraction and so on. So that actually, in the end, kind of a little bit joins what you said, Guillaume, is that, in the end, the PPPs for you might be a risky solutions, because as we've seen, most of the time or sometimes, I don't have enough experience in that, but in a lot of cases, the profit that is behind gets more importance, and the private sector gets more money out of this. So it's probably getting out of these logics to create a really social city, I guess, and co-create them with the citizens.
If I can elaborate on this one, we mentioned PPPs, ESCOs, and so on. Why not considering? I think in Denmark or in Germany there are some interesting experiences.
I'm just going to interrupt you. So we have 1 minute, so you can close with that if that's fine by you.
I mean, why not going for citizen-driven or owned experiments like co-ops, cooperatives, energy-saving cooperatives? Why not? If we can have enough experimentations with state facilitation and grants, why not? for the engineering part, it could be a good, let's say, POC, proof of concept for future experimentations.
Okay. Okay. Would you like to add something to close quickly, Guillaume?
Yes, just it was about the just previous explanation of Amine concerning the way we are reinventing our cities for the citizen. That's really a trend we observe in Brussels, for instance. All the project has to be very mixed project now, and we try to reintegrate qualitative residential in all neighborhood, even in offices neighborhood, to bring back a mix in the city. And with the COVID-19, we observe that there are some people just leaving the city, but there are other people staying in the city that are really enjoying it. And with the concept of 15-minute city, we see that with the disparition of and the vision of the administration to remove a lot of the car in Brussels, we will have in the next years cities which are really improving in quality for the citizen. You will be able to get anything you want at 10-15 minutes for where you live. And on a pure, I think, carbon impact, I'm sure that the citizen does have a less impact than the people living in the neighborhood. Because when you live in an apartment, instead of having a big house or a small house for yourself, you don't need your car. You can do everything you want with a bike. And on the long term, I think we must preserve the natural area we still have, and to make more density in the city while keeping a very good quality of life for the citizen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you very much. Time is up, unfortunately. Thank you for your input. It was very and have a nice day further.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.